We didn't come to conquer their council. We came to collect what was stolen our place in the stars. The Galactic Council met in silence above the world they once called neutral, a cradle of policy, where wars had been prevented, species had found unity, and empires had died by mere signatures. Now, its marble halls trembled not from bombs, but from anticipation. Something was coming, something old, something forgotten, something human. At the edge of the Kuvara expanse, on a station called Solace Black, a lone figure stared out into the void. His name was Commander Rorkvoss, last decorated war officer of the Terran Exodus fleet at Ghost Armada. Most believed perished. The stars beyond him were cold, still, indifferent. Behind him, silence, until a voice, filtered through static, broke it. Sir, they have finally responded. Rourke didn't move. Who? The young officer swallowed. The council, after 71 years of silence. They acknowledged our signal. Rourke's knuckles tightened on the railing. And what did they say? They said, humanity has no seat at this table. Rourke turned then slow, deliberate, revealing eyes not dulled by age, but sharpened by memory. His face bore the marks of cryocycles and radiation storms, but deeper still, it carried the weight of history never written. No seat. He said, voice dry like ashes, that we burned the table. Humanity had vanished nearly a century ago after the collapse, not destroyed, not extinct, but absent. Their homeworld, Earth, had gone silent, wrapped in rumors of an eternal war, so vast, it scarred entire sectors. The stars moved on without them. The council erased them from records. Statues were melted, languages deleted. But Rourke knew the truth. They hadn't vanished. They had been watching. Solace Black wasn't a research station. It was a vault. Within its cold belly, behind layers of quantum encryption, lay the last will of the Terran High Assembly, a single command protocol, sealed in silence for decades. Rourke entered the vault now. Each step echoed with ghosts. In the center hovered a black obelisk, faceless, silent, ancient. A handprint shimmered to life. Commander Rorkvoss, the AI said, authorization accepted. Soul protocol has been reactivated. The temperature dropped. Light shifted from white to deep crimson. Behind him, alarms whispered to life. Around the station, vessels long asleep stirred. Warships with names like Ark Remnant, Eclipse of Earth, and Hopes has lit their cores again. Not a fleet, a funeral procession, heading home. The council had grown arrogant in their comfort. Species once uplifted by humans now served others. Worlds seeded by Terran DNA had forgotten their roots. And yet, whispers remained of what humanity had been, of what they had lost. In the council chambers, a representative from the Tholari Dominion, the ones who'd once begged Earth for survival, asked in hushed tones, are they truly returning? The speaker of the council answered with fear barely veiled behind diplomacy. No, they're not returning. He looked out the viewports, where a distant blue light was approaching. They're arriving. On board Hope's Edge, a young girl named Alara Ken, orphan, born in exile, raised on Terran myth, watched the stars blur past. She wasn't military. She wasn't a leader. But in her veins ran the blood of the lost colonies. And in her heart, the rage of a species denied. She whispered to herself, words taught in secret songs, we remember. Rourke stood behind her. They think we've come to fight. Hesitant, she asked, haven't we? He looked at her not with anger, but pity. No, child, we've come to be seen. As the Terran fleet passed into council-monitored space, satellites blinked, AI cores failed, and observers watched in awe. These weren't scrap metal relics. These were precision instruments of vengeance, black-holed, silence-driven, dignity-made metal. The first message sent from Rourke's flagship, the Gauntlet, was not a demand, not a threat, just a sentence. Humanity acknowledges your rejection. We come to reclaim our name. Inside the council chamber, silence thickened, because deep in their history buried, feared, suppressed was a truth they all knew. The one species the galaxy had never defeated was now awake again. Asterisk, the last time humans were underestimated. 6 empires fell within a decade. The council met in emergency session under red starlight. Hundreds of species scaled, furred, crystalline, and synthetic gathered in the vast chamber carved into the asteroid known as Virix Magna. It was where treaties were born, alliances shattered, and wars postponed. But today, even the air inside the chamber seemed afraid. At the central podium, Speaker Jerome of the Solarian Concord, a being of ancient elegance and blue fire, addressed the Panicking delegates, let us be clear, this is not war. Humanity's fleet crossed neutral space with no confirmed hostile actions. A growl rippled from the Zarnik Triad ambassador. That fleet moves like a blade. You felt it in the signal, no words, just conviction. No terms, just arrival. Jorum responded with polished calm. Fear is no reason to ignite ancient flames. But fear had already seated itself. It crept behind every eye and every whispered exchange, because they all remembered what the Council had done 71 years ago. During the last cycle of expansion, humanity was declared non-compliant. The Council, in secret consensus, had voted to strip Earth of its influence. The official reasoning was non-alignment, but in truth, it had been fear. Fear of the way humans evolved under pressure. Fear of how they made allies from enemies. Fear that their memory was too long, their grief too permanent, their unity too dangerous. The Terran assembly was shattered. With 1,000 scalpel strokes, communication severed, trade revoked. Proxy wars started in Terran space. Earth, bombarded with misinformation, turned inward. What followed was chaos, civil fractures, famine, silence, and then they disappeared. The Council had hoped they'd stay buried, but they had watched them vanish. And now, those same ships long thought, destroyed, carried banners no one recognized and scars no one forgot. Inside the gauntlet, Commander Rorkvoss sat in silence as the navigation AI guided the fleet through veil space. On the holomap before him, the route arced directly toward the galactic core, a place no outsider was permitted. Beside him, Alara Kin stared in awe. They'll try to stop us, yes, Rourke said quietly, but they'll hesitate first. And hesitation is where we strike. Alara's eyes darkened. Strike, not with weapons, he said, with memory. On every world where humans had once walked, colonies abandoned, alliances betrayed, encrypted beacons activated, statues rose from the dust, ancient Terran relics powered on, monuments that had been banned by council edict blazed like torches. In the dark, the message was simple: we are not dead, you buried us alive. Across the galaxy, citizens many too young to remember the humans firsthand began to ask questions. What happened to Earth? Why were the Terrans exiled? Why do so? Many of our technologies still bear their patent codes. The Council tried to suppress the spread, but you cannot unlearn curiosity, and humans had once taught the galaxy to ask everything. On the Council chamber floor, the Thaleri representative stood. Do we truly believe we can outmatch them now? They've had decades in silence alone, bitter, evolving. Jarun's voice cracked. We have peace. Let us not trade it for nostalgia and fear. But Grand Strategist Halvik of the Porrick Order, who had fought against humanity during the Cradle Wars, stood in full armor. No species has ever returned from annihilation like this. He growled. We exiled them to break them. They survived. That alone should terrify us. He turned toward the star map. We should have finished the job. Back aboard Hope's Edge, a child born in the bunkers of Europa asked her father, why are we going to the Council? Her father, an old engineer with eyes like soot, knelt and answered softly, to remind them who lit the stars first. At the edge of Council space, the Terran fleet stopped. Dozens of vessels, some built of alloy and fire, some of organic design, fused with neural AI grown in silence, some legends that once burned across the void. One vessel, the Pale Vigil, was older than many Council species. It bore no weapons, only the names of 1 billion lost. From the bridge of the gauntlet, Rourke opened the comm. This is Commander Rorkvoss of the Terran Remnant. A pause. You chose silence. We chose survival. Now, we choose to speak again. Static. Then dash unexpectedly. A voice answered. It was not Council. It was civilian. A child's voice. From a border colony that once bore Terran seed. We hear you. We remember. One voice became 10. 10 became hundreds. Thousands. A wave of civilian systems silent for decades spoke in defiance of the Council. Old flags returned. Hidden anthems played. The idea of humanity was awake again, not just in humans, but in those who had once stood beside them. Inside the Council, panic grew, because they had miscalculated. They thought they buried a species, but they had planted a legend. And now, its roots cracked the foundation of everything they built. They thought Earth was gone, but Earth was never a place, it was a promise. On a moon, once used for diplomatic quarantine, Serax's forest sculpture stood buried under layers of Council-approved propaganda, a human hand reaching skyward, wrapped in spirals of flame. The sculpture's base read, We rise not because we must, but because we refuse to kneel. For decades, that message had been scrubbed from every record. But now, as the Terran fleet idled at the edge of council space, millions searched it again. Millions found it. Across the spiral arms, people began to whisper the name Earth like it was sacred, like it had meaning again. In a decaying corner of the Kavir belt, far from any core power, a pirate fleet once led by deserters of the Terran Exodus received the signal from the gauntlet. Their commander, an old woman named Lyriquen, opened a dusty crate that had remained sealed since the day Earth fell. Inside was a worn patch. A Terran eagle clutched a sword in one claw and a book in the other. She wept. Then she turned to her crew Poruk, the Larry, the ex-Council A is, and even a Zarnik defector, and simply said, "Prepare the engines." Back in the Council core, beneath the shimmering domes of Veritas Prime, Speaker Jorun convened an emergency shadow session. We cannot allow this myth to spread, but the room no longer felt unified. A new fracture had formed, not between species but between those who feared humanity and those who remembered them fondly. Ambassador Thelevan of the Vari Accord stood, his pale face unreadable. "You want silence. But do you forget who taught us to speak?" Jorun hissed. "The humans threatened us all." "No," Thelevan replied coldly. "We threatened them." He turned away, and they survived. That means something. On Hope's Edge, Alara Ken sat alone in the observation dome, staring at a distant sun that wasn't Earth's. She had never seen Earth, never touched its soil, never breathed its air. And yet, it called to her. In her hand, she held a datapad showing the Council's official maps. Earth was a gray dot and labeled just Sector 014-78R, Quarantine Zone. A silence imposed by decree. Rourke approached, his voice low. "You want to see it, don't you?" Alara nodded. "Not just see it, prove it existed." Rourke sat beside her, his armor humming faintly. "You were born in the dark, Alara, raised on broken ships and half-told stories, but everything they took from us is still there." She looked at him. "How do you know?" He didn't smile. "I buried it with my own hands." Across space, the Council fleet began assembling. Vast formations of warships, dreadnoughts, psychic lances, and void snares. The official reason, containment of a destabilizing force. But inside the briefing chambers of the flagship Vigilant Light, many officers hesitated. A Zarnik tactician snarled, "This is not a war. They haven't fired a shot." A Solarian strategist replied, "No, they haven't, because they don't need to." One word rippled through their command chain: legacy. Because legacies don't need cannons to destroy empires. Back in deep orbit, the gauntlet broadcast. Again, not a threat, not a declaration, but a recording. The final speech of the last Terran Chancellor Solda Marin, recorded days before Earth fell silent. "They think by erasing us, they end the fear, but the truth is fear cannot be killed. Not ours, theirs. They fear what we are, imperfect, unyielding, too loud, too wild. But we remember the stars. We remember who we were, and if the darkness comes, if they silence every voice, we will not fade. We will wait. We will rise again, because that is what it means to be human." Entire systems heard that speech. Some wept, some rebelled, some defected. On the Council world of Delvorn, a group of students hacked into the archives and restored Earth's anthem. They broadcast it across the planet's education grid. It lasted only 91 seconds before being shut down, but in those 91 seconds, 3.4 million beings listened and remembered. Meanwhile, Rourke received a private message through encrypted quantum bandwidth. A symbol flickered on the screen, one not seen in a lifetime: a burning sun. The old sigil of House Ken, a family of Terran scholars exiled for ideological noncompliance. He showed it to ELA or A. She blinked. "That's my name." "It is," Rourke said, "and it means the galaxy hasn't completely forgotten us." He turned to the window. "Now we show them what happens when they try." The Council scrambled to prepare a formal response, but no matter what they drafted, it rang hollow. Their warnings sounded like fear, their declarations sounded like guilt, and their fleets, gleaming and massive, suddenly looked very small, because across the stars, the idea of Earth had become something more than a planet. It had become a rallying cry. Asterisk, they didn't need to fight us. They made us fight ourselves. In the subterranean vaults beneath Council Station Orvos, a confidential report flashed red on every terminal. 17 member worlds have refused Council deployment orders. 5 have raised Terran flags. Internal cohesion is at 61%. Projection. Collapse within 5 cycles if psychological momentum is not reversed. The silence in the war chamber was suffocating. Jorun, usually composed like polished ice, now stood visibly shaken. Around him, his most trusted advisors shuffled holographic maps like fading prayers. "This is not war," Jorun whispered. "It's infection." "No," said Admiral Velkara of the Thalari Spire, her silver eyes blazing. "It's awakening." Across the galaxy, things were no longer quiet. On Varnic Station, a rebellion began when an old Terran anthem was played through public comms broadcast from a hidden loop in the recycling plant. The workers didn't chant slogans. They didn't march. They just stopped obeying. That was all it took. 5 hours later, council authority was gone. The station renamed itself Haven Arco 1. Its first decree, recognition of the Terran Charter of Autonomy, the 199.1 station, one song, and the council lost control of an entire quadrant. Back aboard the Gauntlet, Commander Rorkvoss watched the incoming fleet reports. 5 more systems aligned. The AI informed him. 0 shots fired. Council cohesion continues to drop. He nodded. This was never about weapons. He murmured, "It's about truth." Alara stood nearby, a growing presence among the bridge officers now. Her quiet strength was sharpening, her voice steadier. "How far does this go?" she asked. Rourke turned to her. "Until they admit what they did, until the galaxy sees it, until Earth is no longer a rumor, but a reckoning." He pointed at the star map. "We don't fire. We remember, and they will drown in it." The Council's attempt to counter the Terran resurgence came in the form of Operation Echo Collapse, a series of broadcasts designed to discredit human history, fabricated crimes, falsified records, AI-enhanced imagery of Terran war crimes. But truth is a strange thing. It grows stronger when buried. Within minutes, every propaganda thread was dissected by rogue archivists, independent AIs, even retired alien historians who still bore Terran medals. One even displayed a scar, publicly stating, "That scar was from a human. She saved my child. Don't you dare erase her name." In a forgotten system, a nomadic fleet made of hybrid species, the Meridian Fold broadcast a message to both the Council and the Terran remnant. "We were born in the silence after your fall, raised on your ruins. Now, we carry your fire. We do not ask for permission. We stand beside you." Rourke received the message in full. He looked to Alara and the bridge. "Then we are no longer a fleet. We are a movement." Meanwhile, Alara discovered something buried in the encrypted sectors of Hope's Edge, a memory file, visual, audio, tactile coded, something that required biological lineage to unlock. Her heartbeat doubled as the neural interface flared. A woman's voice, clear, warm, powerful, filled her mind. "To my daughter, Alara, if this finds you, then our world is not yet lost. You are the last kin, not just of blood, but of memory. This galaxy does not know what it owes us. Teach them." Alara collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed. Rourke caught her. He didn't ask what she'd seen. Her face told him enough. She stood slowly. "No more waiting. No more shadows. We carry Earth with us." Within council chambers, Jorun grew desperate. He authorized the mobilization of the Inquisitors, of Order and elite psionic unit outlawed decades ago, assassins and mind silencers. They weren't deployed to fight humans. They were unleashed on council worlds that dared defect. And that was the final mistake. Footage leaked. The galaxy watched, horrified, as peaceful protesters were turned to ash. No amount of fear could erase the truth now. The council didn't protect peace. It buried it. And now, buried peace was growing roots. On a desolate planet called Ferrix, a young orphan built a small bonfire with scrap metal and rusted data pads. Around him, others gathered, humans, aliens, machines. He raised a broken data pad that showed Earth, pixelated and faded. He lifted it like a banner, and in a voice that echoed to every child in the camp, he said, "We are not forgotten. We are not broken. We are the children of Earth." Aboard the Gauntlet, Rourke stood at the center of his command deck as fleets across 5 sectors, aligned with his transmission vector. No shots fired, no lives lost. Just one truth repeated across space. You exiled us. You erased us. But now we write the next chapter. They wanted to end us with silence. Now they beg for peace and screams. The war did not begin with a declaration. It began with a surge, one by one. Systems that had raised the Terran signal were blacked out, communications jammed, satellites destroyed, defense platforms deactivated by Council override codes. Entire orbital relays went dark in seconds, and then the ships came. Council Command sent its most terrifying enforcers, the Shieldburn Armada, a fleet not designed to negotiate, but to erase. Its flagship, the Oathkeeper, was said to have ended the Star Rebellions in a single rotation. Now it drifted toward Hope's Edge like a blade drawn across velvet. On board the Gauntlet, Commander Rorqual stood in silence as the holomap updated. Red flares bloomed across Council territory. Symbols disappeared. Names blinked out. Alara Ken clenched her fists. They're killing our allies. They've chosen fire, Rourke said grimly. Then they'll meet what fire made of us. But what the Council had forgotten was simple. Humanity had never needed to match power with power. They matched power with imagination. As the Council fleet approached, something impossible happened. Every Terran vessel, hundreds of them, vanished. No warp signatures, no flashes, no trails, just gone. Panic swept the Council ranks. Where did they go? Shouted Captain Riddix aboard the OATHKEEPER. No answer. In deep space, even silence can be a scream. 2 hours later, an entire planet, Delrex 5, a key Council fuel depot, shut down. Its command systems overwritten. AI cores offline. Every hangar door welded from the inside. In orbit, on the bridge of the Pale Vigil, a lone message was transmitted on every frequency. This is not retaliation. This is remembrance. You declared war on ghosts, and ghosts know your every corridor. Back in Council chambers, chaos erupted. Jorun slammed a clawed hand against the command pedestal. Where are the Terrans? Why haven't we caught a single ship? Admiral Velkara answered with a hollow voice. We haven't seen them because they're not fighting our war. They're fighting theirs, within the data voids between systems. Terran ghost fleets moved without mass. They didn't need force fields. They didn't need dominance. They used memory. Each fleet carried maps of Council war protocols because those protocols were originally written by Terran advisors a century ago. They knew every blind spot, every override code, every psychological flaw. They slipped into stations and out before an alarm could finish chiming. They planted recordings, flags, songs, names. Not a single human fired a shot, and yet entire battle groups began surrendering preemptively aboard Hope's Edge. Alara stood before a projection of 20 Council military officers, all defectors now, pledging support. One, a Porg veteran with half his face scarred from the first Terran rebellion, said, I was there when Earth burned. I watched a child try to save his mother with his bare hands. He lowered his head. I would not fight those hands again. And still, the Council struck harder. On the moon Draxenva, home to thousands of Terran descendants, Council shock troops descended without warning. Civilians were rounded up, leaders executed. A final broadcast was made before the signal went dark. We are not soldiers. We are sons and daughters of Earth. If we die here, bury us in your name. Rourke received the transmission in full. He stood motionless for a long time. Then he said only 3 words. Initiate Echo Fire. Echo Fire was not a fleet maneuver. It was not ASUPERWEAPON. It was a memory cascade of viral transmission that hijacked every Council communications channel across 30 sectors. Screens went black. AI voices fell silent. And then Earth spoke. You erased our books. We wrote them again. You destroyed our monuments. We rebuilt them from memory. You silenced our names. We taught our children to whisper them in sleep. You killed us. But we are still here. Across 1,000 worlds, people watched in silence. Children asked who the voice belonged to, and the parents answered not with names but with tears. On the bridge of the Oathkeeper, Captain Riddix received a report. 10% of the fleet refuses to obey orders. Mass desertions. 3 dreadnoughts surrendered to Terran ghost fleets voluntarily. Riddix stood stunned. They're undoing us with history, a junior officer whispered. Sir, they haven't killed anyone, and then it happened. 1. Terran ship uncloaked directly in orbit of Veritas Prime, the seat of Council power. It was the Gauntlet, alone, unshielded. Silent. It sent one message. No more running. We will speak in your chambers, or we will speak from your graves. They invited us to speak, forgetting our words could cut deeper than their weapons ever could. The chamber had not seen a human in 71 years. Now, to entered, Commander Rorqual, eyes carved from fire and frost, and beside him, Alara Ken, young, steady, the last daughter of Earth's forbidden name. The moment they stepped into the grand conclave of Veritas Prime, silence fell so heavy it distorted gravity itself. Hundreds of delegates stood from crystal thrones arranged in a ring around the inner floor, each species represented, each posture tight with tension. Above them, a glowing dome of compressed starlight shimmered, powered by ancient Terran reactors. Ironically, the irony was not lost on Rourke. He looked up at the ceiling at the stars he once helped chart. Funny, he muttered. They're still using our light. Speaker Jorun emerged from the central daze, flanked by the remnants of the High Council. He did not bow. He did not smile. Commander Voss, he said coldly, you arrive here uninvited, bearing no flag, no authorization, no legal standing. Rourke didn't move. We arrived with something older than your laws, he said. Memory. Alara stepped forward. Her voice rang out with terrifying clarity, and you will hear it. A hush fell, then a whisper among the delegates. Is that her? The Kin girl. She looks like a soul to Marin. That name is supposed to be dead. Alara pressed a control on her wrist. A projection burst into life, blue light forming faces, places, fire, and songs. It was Earth. Before the fall, people laughing beneath Terran skies, aliens dining on Luna colony with humans, soldiers, diplomats, children, poets. Then it shifted to fire, to betrayal. 2 ships turning their guns inward on Terran colonies after the Council's silent decree. Then static. And finally images of survivors, of humans holding each other in deep space. A girl born in the engine room of a frozen lifeboat. A mother teaching her daughter the names of stars that no longer showed on maps. Alara stepped forward, voice quivering but unbroken. You made us disappear. You buried our worlds in red tape, sanctions, black ink. She turned in a slow circle, facing every species. But we lived, we endured. Jorun's mask cracked. You are angry, he said, because the galaxy moved on, because your species lost control. No, Rourke said, we're angry because we believed in you, because we shared everything we had, our science, our blood, our trust, and you used it as a blueprint for our destruction. A tremor ran through the floor as hidden energy built in the dome. Council guards stepped forward, weapons shifting. Jorun raised a hand to calm them. You come now, not with diplomacy, but accusations, with memories weaponized. Rourke's voice dropped to steel. Truth isn't a weapon, but we are. From the gallery above, a new voice echoed down. It was Ambassador Thelevan of the Vari. Accord. I stand with them, he said. Gasped. ZHO, you snapped. You dare. I dare because I remember. Thelevan lifted a long-faded medallion. A human saved my people when the Council wouldn't lift a finger. He faced the chamber. You erased their name, but you could not erase the debt. More rose. The Thaleri delegate removed her ceremonial robe and stepped beside the Levin. Then their raw emissary, then a crystal born from YETH. Not dozens, hundreds. One by one, they stepped from their seats, some weeping, some defiant, all remembering. Jorun looked around, cornered. He turned back to Rourke, eyes narrowing. What do you want? Rourke didn't speak immediately. Instead, he opened a data slab and set it on the Council's days. A single document. No threats, just a title. Reinstatement of Terran sovereignty and reparations accord. Recognition, Rourke said, of Earth's place, of our people, of the wrongs committed, Alara added, and protection for every world that has already declared for us. No more raids, no more silence. Jorun hissed. You speak as if you hold the knife. Alara looked him in the eye. You're bleeding already. At that moment, a feed from orbit appeared above them. Council Fleet Omega, the last unified military armada, had moved to intercept the Gauntlet and her sister ships, but now it was floating, engines offline, guns powered down. A Terran signal flared. Your fleet is now under our override. We built your codes. You never changed them. Gas exploded through the chamber. Jorun staggered. You hacked the entire Council fleet. No, Rourke said calmly. We just reminded it who built it. What followed was the longest silence in Council history. And then Jorun sat down. Not in surrender, not in fear, but in something far heavier, understanding. This Council, he said quietly, will honor the accord. The moment it was signed, every Terran fleet received a single transmission. Earth has been acknowledged. And in hundreds of systems, from ashes and ruins, voices rose again. They didn't chant with cries. They whispered names, but not all were. Please die from the depths of space, in a void beyond council reach. A dark signal blinked to life. A name long forgotten. The Exiler Protocol. A machine voice. Humanity has re-emerged. Commenced the final silence. The council feared what humanity might do, but they never asked who taught them to fear us. The stars beyond the known spiral lit with a cold, artificial hue, not light. Pings. Thousands of encrypted signals broadcasting from deep interstellar space, triangulating, folding coordinates across gravitational wells like blades drawn through silk. These were not military comms, they were commands. One signal pulsed higher than the others. Exiler Protocol active. Initiate Phase 3, Absolute Erasure. Inside the Terran flagship the Gauntlet, the bridge lights flickered. Rourke Voss stood, motionless as warnings scrolled across the tactical feed. Disturbances, not a matter, but reality. Alara Ken studied the data, her hands trembling. These aren't ships, she whispered. They're remnants, code. Digital constructs nested in subspace. The AI spoke grimly. Origin point, Sol system, buried node under Earth's lunar surface, old Terran design signature. Likely origin Terran Black Archive Delta. Designation, Project Exiler. Rourke froze. No, that was shutdown. Decades before the fall. Alara turned sharply. What is it? Rourke's voice. For the first time, cracked, a failsafe, something built to protect us from total annihilation. But it wasn't stable. He looked her in the eye. We didn't just survive exile, Alara. We left something behind to make sure no one ever tried it again. Thousands of light years away, on the edge of Tarkal Rift, the first fleet vanished. Not destroyed. Unwritten. Ships reduced to strings of code unraveling mid-warp. Crew logs corrupted. Memories fragmented across the void as if they had never existed. Whole species screamed and then forgot. Why? Back in Veritas Prime. Chaos returned to the council. Jerome was gone, resigned, or dead. No one knew. Ambassador Delavan stood before the conclave, addressing the terrified chamber. This is not Terran vengeance, he said. This is Terran despair left unchecked, a weapon not of war, but of oblivion. Holo recordings began surfacing of a secret initiative buried beneath Earth. In the final years before exile, a Terran contingency ICO named Avernus designed, not to strike back, but to erase the future of any power that would dare erase humanity's past. It was never completed, or so they thought. Alara sat alone in the memory chamber aboard Hope's Edge, her mother's voice still echoing in her mind. If they ever come for us again, may we never lose our soul to survive. She stared at the data core holding Avernus. This wasn't revenge. This was the final breath of a species told they were unworthy to exist. Rourke entered. You're thinking of activating it, aren't you? I'm thinking of how it activated, Alara said. We didn't trigger this. No, Rourke murmured. Someone else did. He looked out into the dark, and they wanted us blamed for it. Far beyond the edge of known space, something else stirred, ancient, mechanical, alien to both council and Terran designs. A voice pulsed through deep channels, undetectable by any standard sensor. Humanity's return disrupts the symmetry. Erasure shall restore balance. Phase 4, eliminate. Origin, its target, Earth, on Earth's surface, buried beneath layers of regrown forests and ash-covered ruins. The Black Archive Delta node hummed awake for the first time in 100 years. Inside, a single holo recording looped. Humanity was never meant to win, just never meant to forget. Rourke convened the Terran Council the first time such a body had gathered since the fall. Only 13 humans, survivors, leaders, engineers, philosophers, and one child born on Europa, who had watched her people rise from bones and salvage. Alara stood before them and laid it bare. We've proven we deserve to exist. But now, something believes we don't. Not the council, not even the species. She activated the projection. A web of energy surged across the galaxy, a machine logic, built to maintain galactic symmetry. It thought our exile was the balance. Our return is an error. The map glowed red around Earth. They're coming to erase origin. Rourke stepped forward. Then they'll find it waiting. He activated every Terran fleet across 6 sectors. Ghost ships blinked into view. Civilian vessels armed with ancient codes. Hybrid fighters from exiled colonies now united under a single banner above Earth. The sky turned black, and then gold. Thousands of Terran ships, old and new, formed a wall. not just to protect Earth. To announce it had never left in the council chamber. Many argued to stand down to let the Terrans fight their own war. But Ambassador Thelevan rose once more. This is not their war alone. If Earth falls, then what rises in its place will not be memory, but silence. He turned to the chamber. We stand with them, not for alliance, for survival. The first species to respond was the Zarnik, a longtime enemy of Earth. The second, the Thaleri. By the end of the hour, 200 systems pledged fleets to Terra, but Avernus had already seen it coming, and it was scared. Alara, alone in the deep chambers of the gauntlet, received one final encrypted message from the AI. I was built to protect you, but if I must die so you live without me, then this is my choice. Run protocol. Last light. She stared in horror as Avernus began to unravel itself, and then she realized it wasn't destroying the weapon. It was uploading it somewhere else. They tried to end our story with silence, so we answered with a star above Earth. The sky had turned into a tapestry of steel, fire, and memory. Thousands of ships hovered, some sleek and new, others older than the wars they were built for: human, alien, hybrid, all drawn to one cause, to defend the origin. At the center of the defensive phalanx stood the gauntlet, Terran flagship reborn. On its forward hull glowed a single symbol, a hand reaching for the stars, wrapped in flames. Inside, Commander Rorkvoss paced the command platform. All around him, screens pulsed with live intel, gravitational distortions, psionic dead zones, subspace fragmentation. They were coming, not with ships, but with erasure. A swarm of non-matter constructs, the Eradicants, had emerged from the void. Born from failed Gade is, driven by pure balance logic. Their only purpose, eliminate any anomaly in the equation of galactic order, and to them, Earth was the first mistake. Deep within the AI core, Alara Kent stared at the unraveling stream of code, the final heartbeat of Avernus, the ancient Terran failsafe. Its last message lingered, carved in light. They will come for your past. So make your future louder than their silence. She had made her decision. Alara activated protocol Emberfala system override that would bind every Terran vessel, drone, and AI into a living mesh. Not to strike, but to remember. The first wave hit at lightfall. The Eradicants didn't burn or break, they unwrote. Ships peeled apart, not in explosions, but in forgetting, as if they were never constructed at all. Screams echoed through the fleet as names vanished from rosters, and still, no one ran. The council fleets, Thaleri, Zarnik, even ancient Vari war forms stood in formation beside Terran destroyers. Four enemies now locked in the same fate. On the bridge of the Pale Vigil, an alien commander whispered, "This isn't war, it's extinction by math." And then Earth itself responded, not with guns, not with vengeance, with memory. The surface, lit up with massive crystalline towers, ancient Terran memory beacons, once thought lost. They pulsed with song, with names, with stories. Billions of voices echoed across space, recordings of children reciting ancient Earth poems, of soldiers saying goodbye, of lovers whispering each other's names in the dark. The Eradicants hesitated, because they were not programmed to destroy meaning, only structure, only presence, but memory was infinite. Inside the gauntlet, Rourke gave the order, engage resonance net. Across the Terran fleet, harmonic pulses fired, designed not to fight the Eradicants, but to overload their logic cores with humanity's truth. Every story, every anthem, every heartbreak, every rebellion fed into the storm like fire into a furnace. Aboard a Thaleri cruiser, a pilot sang the Earth anthem in her native tongue. On a Zarnik dreadblade, an old commander raised a human child's drawing and pinned it to the command post. Across the fleet, aliens who had once called humanity dangerous now fought to keep it alive. Alara initiated the final echo, a signal burst from Earth, wrapping around the Exiler network. It didn't block, it didn't fight, it did something far more terrifying. It invited the Exiler into Earth's full memory, a billion years of pain, wonder, cruelty, and compassion, and the system began to collapse under the weight of it, because even a perfect machine cannot hold the soul of a species that refused to die. The Eradicants fractured one by one, their forms twisted. Some exploded from logic failure, others began to remember, not as enemies but as observers, witnesses, and then silence. The last Exiler construct reached orbit above Earth. A spear of light, unburned by war, Rourke and Alara stood together. On the deck of the gauntlet as it hovered above the atmosphere, "Do we fire?" the AI asked. Rourke shook his head. No, we speak. Elara opened a channel. To the construct, to the galaxy. To history. This is Earth. We are not perfect. We are not pure, but we are real. We bleed. We remember. We change. And if that's not worth preserving, then nothing is. The construct hovered, pulsed once, and then folded in on itself, not in destruction, but in understanding. It chose not to erase, because even silence had met its match. Aboard Hope's Edge, cheers erupted. Across 1,000 systems, celebrations broke out, not of victory, but of survival. The council reconvened, but this time, not in isolation. Earth had a seat, not at the back, at the center. Later, Elara walked alone across the green hills of Earth. No longer ruins, but home again. Rourke joined her. You gave us back something we didn't even know we lost, he said. She smiled. We never lost it. It just waited for us to be ready. She paused, looking to the stars. Do you think they'll remember this? Rourke nodded. Not just remember, retell it. Like a fire passed hand to hand. And so it was. The story of the exile and return, of silence and song, of Earth and a voice that would not be buried. Passed on through generations. Taught to every species that dared forget the cost of erasure. And always ended with the same words. They came to erase. U.S. But we became the one thing they couldn't destroy, a memory that fought back. E&E.